Well, hello, welcome back to Tail 3 Cabins. If you watched my last video, it was kind of a tilling extravaganza with the tractor. I had a lot of tilling jobs around the house here. Certainly it was the time of year to get our garden planted, so we were tilling up our garden. And then finally, our pole barn project, we finally came and tilled everything around here. We added some topsoil and planted some grass. And then through the magic of YouTube, you were able to see just how well that grass took. So I thought, while we're on the subject of having a new lawn, especially in this area here by the pole barn, I would talk a little bit about mowing it or cutting it. Normally I use a John Deere zero-turn lawnmower to cut all the grass on our property. That's all around the house, around the pole barn now, where the chicken coop used to be, and then out by the street there's a little patch of grass out there that needs to be taken care of. When I was back on the fire department, we used to go inspect the Honda dealer off of one of the main streets in our district, and in front of that Honda dealer they had this robotic mower, and this goes back probably 15 or 20 years ago, where they had this little robotic mower that sat out front, and it would periodically leave its full charging base and cut the grass out in front of the business, and I always thought that was kind of neat. So these things have been around for a while, and I thought I would test out this Sunseeker L robotic mower. Now they say it's good for about 1/4 to 1/2 acre of grass. So I'm going to test it out here. It's going to get a pretty real world testing, because I have different grades. I have little bumps, and my lawn isn't completely smooth. Now, just a little disclaimer, I'm not one of those people that dream of being a groundskeeper for a Major League Baseball field and getting nice stripes and crisscrosses in my lawn. In fact, I usually look forward to the July dry out, when we don't have a period of rain for a while and the grass goes dormant, turns brown, and I don't have to cut it for 3 or 4 weeks. So I just wanted to get that out there, that I'm not very nitpicky about my lawn. I usually do not use a lot of fertilizers with it. From time to time I will use a turf builder, and most of the time when I use fertilizer, it's only when I'm planting new seed or something like that. So let's get back to the Sunseeker mower. Now, why would I want to try something like this? Well, we did take a trip out west last year, and we were gone well over a month, and when we came back our grass was pretty tall and was not tended to. So having something that could automatically cut the grass for you and keep things at bay while you're away at long periods of time kind of intrigues me a little bit. We do want to use our RV a little bit more. We do have another big trip planned later on at the end of summer, and then throughout the next couple of years we're looking at trips where we might be at the beginning of summer, the middle of summer, end of summer. So to not have to rely on somebody to take care of our lawn, or like I said last time, we didn't have anybody take care of it. It was just a pretty high hay field when we got back. This would be one of those scenarios where I'd be interested in trying out a robotic mower. Another one is that I have a brother that he's a little bit older than me, still with it in pretty good shape, but he has this disease in his bones that affect his lower legs, and he really can't walk good anymore. In fact, the more he walks, the worse the disease gets. He still likes to take care of his yard, and he's pretty picky about his lawn. His yard's smaller than mine, not much to it, basically 2 rectangles, one in the back and one in the front. So something like this would probably work out perfect for him, where he does not have to try to cut the grass anymore. So there's all sorts of scenarios why you might want to try something like this. So when I got this, it was delivered by FedEx. They left the box by my garage. It was nicely packed in just a plain, inconspicuous brown box. Open it up. Basically everything was packed very nicely, so there couldn't be any damage. Comes with a charging station, the unit itself, and then this particular unit uses a guide wire. Like many of the robotic mowers out there, they use a guide wire unless you want to really get into some pricey mowers. The boundary wire for this is 250 meters, which is somewhere over 820 feet of wire. And it's a similar principle as an invisible fence for your pet. Usually you set up a wire around the perimeter where you don't want the dog to go outside of, and that tries to keep your pet within those bounds. So this is very similar to that. You set up a wire around the boundaries of your yard, and that keeps the mower within those boundaries. Now there are some more expensive mowers that still use a guide wire, but they say they're GPS assist. You still need a guide wire for those and lay down, but with the GPS assist, it tries not to repeat going over places that it went over again. The GPS assist robotic mowers are probably in the price range of $2,500 to $3,000, so almost 2.5 to 3 times more than this. Now they do make all GPS mowers that doesn't need a guide wire, but those mowers are around $4,500 to $5,000, so you're talking 4.5 to 5 times more than this. So using a guide wire is pretty much standard with robotic mowers, especially when you're talking introductory models. Now the first thing you're going to want to do is determine the best place for your charging station, and they recommend putting it near an area where your house gets good Wi-Fi, and then you're also going to want to have it near where you could plug into an outlet somewhere. So I'm going to go survey our house. I'll show you a little overview of our house and exactly where I think that the charging station should go, and then how this perimeter wire is going to get laid out. As soon as you open up the packaging, you'll notice on this strip of cardboard here is a template which will help guide you in the installation of the guide wire. You'll also need to stake this guide wire down, and it's going to come with plenty, an ample supply of miniature tent stakes. There'll be another package that has larger ones to secure the base to the ground. This is the charging block, and it has a pretty long cord that goes with it. These are some extra blades, and the blades basically look like double-sided razor blades. Already mounted underneath are 3 other blades, and they're pretty easy to change if you need to change them out. Even the unit looks like it's about 20-22 inches wide. The swath that this cuts is about 9 inches. It's easy to adjust the height with the dial on top of the unit. They say to start out kind of tall at first and then work your way down. When the battery gets down to about 15%, and you'll see this in a few minutes, it'll automatically go home and charge itself into the charging station and plug itself in, basically right here. If you just plug it in without setting it up, you're going to get a flashing red light that basically says that you don't have your perimeter set up yet. So I've selected an area that's kind of out of sight, out of mind. It's close to an outlet, and it gets good Wi-Fi in this corner of our yard. You'll notice there's an in and out on the pad, and out basically means out of bounds where it's not going to cut, and in means you're inside the perimeter of where the lawnmower will be cutting. So I have a fair idea how I'm going to keep it one continuous long loop going through several sections of our yard and then back to the base station. The wire is 18 gauges thick. You just need to trim off the end about a ½ inch, and it's similar to putting a speaker wire into a speaker, the same type of connection, pretty simple. I'm starting out with the black first. I'm kind of working in reverse of what the instructions are. So that's going to be the most tedious part of the setup. It's going to take a little time, probably 2 to 3 hours, but it also reminds me of something else I saw in a movie one time.
Oh, sorry. Au revoir, Gopher. This is gonna be sweet.
Now, using that cardboard template that it came with has 2 measurements on there. There's a 3-inch measurement and approximately an 8-inch measurement. The 8-inch will keep you away from anything you don't want to be damaged or sliced or diced, and then the 3-inch will allow you to trim over areas like next to a driveway or a sidewalk. You're going to find the more time you spend putting this down and thinking things out and getting your measurements just right, the better it will be for you in the long run, and you won't need to tweak or change anything once you get your mower up and running. The area I'm setting up is about 1/4 acre, but this mower says it is good to cutting up to 1/2 acre. If it's a nice straight line between stakes, you can go about 30 to 32 inches apart. If it's a tighter line, it's going to be turning. You're going to put your stakes a little bit tighter than that. Once you have all your stakes done, you want to go around and find trouble areas like this one here that could accidentally get trimmed by the mower because it's kind of sticking up. Now that you've completed your continuous loop and you're back at the base station, trim that end, reveal about 1/2 inch of wire, and then you're going to thread it through the front part of the pad. This will be so the mower knows where it's going to come back to. For the mower to properly dock into the charging station, you're going to want about 3 feet of straight wire in front of that pad.
Yep. Keep going.
That good?
Keep going.
Oh, it's not coming out.
Earlier there was a red light, but now that this perimeter is hooked up and there's no brakes in the line, I got a green light. I did one more walk around and I did find this little trouble area between two high spots, so I'm just going to tap this one down and bury it a little closer to the ground. Okay, so the mower is in its charging station. Now from here you can control it with the buttons on top. If you try to do that, there is a pin code that you can set so nobody can disrupt it or try to use it without your knowledge. Or you can control it with an app that easily hooks up to your home Wi-Fi. It was pretty easy to set up. I had no issues with that. And you can pretty much control it from anywhere. You can see the charge status and then you have your controls towards the bottom there. And I'm going to hit the work button just to get it started and we'll just test it out. There are three ways that this will sense how it stays within the boundaries of your yard. One is the guide wire that it uses. Another is that it basically has sensors almost like a vehicle when you're backing up to something and it's telling you it's too close to an object. This can sense that also. And then a third would be if it sensed something hitting the bumper itself physically. It would just immediately stop and then redirect itself. You will notice immediately that it is very quiet. The blades are spinning right now, but you don't hear them. You might hear them if it's going some pretty thick, heavy grass, but other than that, it's almost silent. I opened up the app and I hit the home button, and what it'll do is it will go until it hits the guide wire and then start working its way back. If you're lucky and you hit the home button, it'll be close to home base and won't have to travel the whole perimeter of your yard, but sometimes it may be towards the beginning and have to do a big loop right around your perimeter area. Alright, that was just a quick test. We'll take it back out in a second. You can also do firmware upgrades in the app in case there are any changes or updates to fix any bugs. You don't have to use the app to start and stop it. You can set a schedule that it will start automatically. Once you do it for your first trial run, you don't really have to hound it and watch it the whole time, but you do want to stay home and just look at it periodically to make sure that it's not hitting any trouble areas, getting stuck on anything. You do want to remove stuff out of the yard, obstacles. You want to pick up any dog poop if you have a dog, any large sticks or anything that it could run over and possibly get stuck on or maybe make the wheels spin. We found that it was hitting obstacles and recorrecting itself, but we did find a few things we needed to tweak at the beginning here. One is we had an area of tall grass and it believed that it was an obstacle rather than grass. So we ended up turning off the sonar on it until we did our first cut and made the grass all level everywhere. As I mentioned in the app, you can set a schedule. Maybe you don't want it to work weekends. Maybe you want it to work 6 hours a day, certain days a week, and then divide it up between 3-hour blocks. Now the 2 check marks here indicate it's going to edge those days also. Once your mower does do an edge cut of the perimeter, you can also prioritize different sections because it will divide it up into different quadrants. So there may be a particular quadrant that you want to pay more attention to, or it might need more cutting, or it's a larger area, so you can prioritize where you need. There are a multitude of settings that you can do. You could have the headlight on, you could have the headlight off. There's a rain delay setting, so if it rains you could tell it to cut 3 or 4 hours after the rain. You can always check its status, see how much battery is left, and I tend to find out that when it gets down about 15% is when it goes back to recharge. This is the amount of sensitivity for the sonar. You can completely turn it off or make it higher or lower. I mentioned you can control the headlight too. You could have that on or off, and it can go out at night. And this is what the headlight looks like when it's out and about. Here the battery has gone below 15% and it indicates that it is returning to home. Our landscape bricks were flush on the ground and we moved them to make a higher obstacle so the mower will avoid it. Here's what happened before we moved them. It got hung up on the block and I hit the little red button on top to shut the blades off before I picked it up and moved it back into the yard. Cutting tall grass. This will cut through some tall grass. I don't think I would make it a habit though, but it is capable of getting through some pretty thick stuff. And here, this is a fresh area of our lawn where we planted new seed not that long ago, and the grass is pretty thick over here. As I mentioned, if it rains, it will not go out. There are two sensors there that sense that there's moisture on top. You see them right there. And once those dry out, you could set a parameter of just how long you want it to wait before it goes out and cut the grass. I have it set for 3 hours. So those sensors would have to dry out, and 3 hours after that, it would go out. Here's an indicator on the app showing that it's sensing rain. Okay, I gotta admit I was a little bit skeptical when I first got this thing just to see how well it would maintain the lawn, but it actually does it. It maintains the area that I set up for it to cut the grass in. It stays within the guide wires that I set up, so it actually does maintain the area that I set up for it. In fact, it's getting ready to come back here. The battery's getting a little bit low, and I think it'll be coming back here to get to the charger. You can see it there in the background working right now. Some pros and cons of owning this thing. So a pro would be, well, you don't have to cut the grass anymore. It's going to cut the grass for you. You're going to pick select times and set up a schedule. It may take several hours to cut the grass depending on your yard size. So there's a few things you got to get used to. I can hop on my zero-turn mower right now and I can cut the grass in about 45 minutes to an hour. But with this thing, it's going to take somewhere around 6 to 7 hours, and it might get broken up between 2 days of cutting. So it's slow and steady wins the race here. You have to get used to that concept that it's not going to cut as quickly as a regular mower is going to cut. Now a con would probably be the setup. It does take a little while to set this thing up, and it is a little bit tedious. You're going to be on your knees a lot, and depending on the size of your yard, it's going to take you a good 2 to 3 hours, especially if you plan on using all 850 some odd feet of that guide wire. But once you do have it set up, then you're good to go and you don't have to do that anymore. And that's basically the parameters of your yard. So another pro would be no maintenance. There's no oil to change, there's no filters to change, no air filter, no belts to break, no fuel to put into it. The only thing you're going to have to do is change the blades occasionally. From what I've read, some of the other folks that have mowers of this type is that they change the blades about once a season. Now that's probably going to depend on the size of your yard, how thick your grass is, and other variables, if it runs into something, hits stones, stuff like that. But it does come with a couple spare blades, and you can buy a 30 pack of blades for about 15 bucks. They're not that difficult to change. You just need a screwdriver and you're pretty much good to go. Most of the blade packs also come with extra screws just in case. Another con would be if you want to pretend that you are a Major League Baseball groundskeeper and you like putting stripes and crisscrosses in your yard. That's really not going to happen with this. There's not going to be a semblance of any patterns that go down. Basically, the less obstacles you have and the more rectangular your yard, it may put in pretty decent amount of stripes in a certain direction, but for the most part it's just going to be hit or miss, and it's just going to be a variety of angles that the mower goes on, especially if it runs into obstacles like trees and other barriers in your yard, because it's going to hit that, make a 45-degree change, and then move on. Another pro would be weighing out the cost. If you have a lawn service or something like that, you might spend $1,000 to $1,500 a year on it, where this could replace the lawn service, at least most of it throughout the year. One thing I think you're going to need to do no matter what, and I need to do this no matter what my mowing needs are, whether I'm using my zero turn or not, is to use a weed whacker. occasionally. I usually do it every other time I mow. This has been able to hit tighter areas than my zero turn has been able to hit, but there's still going to be areas where I'm going to need to weed whack once in a while. Another pro is that it does not make hardly any noise. I'm sitting here right now and it's cutting grass, and it's barely audible except you hear the motor or the wheels going right now. So that's nice. So you can pretty much cut anytime you want to. If you wanted to start cutting earlier in the morning or later in the evening, it can do that, and it's not going to disturb any neighbors, and you're not going to get any complaint. Also, when you're going to be setting this up and you're putting that guide wire down, like I said, the more time you spend putting that down, the less time in the future you'll have to make any minor adjustments. But if you do have to make a minor adjustment, you can pull up a couple stakes and adjust and tweak here and there just how far the guide wire comes in or close to your edges. So if you don't think it's cut enough during a certain edge, so you can pull up those stakes and move it a couple inches one way or the other. This is another possible con, is if you're someone that likes to dethatch your lawn or aerate it every year, you can still do that, but you're going to want to be careful of where that guide wire is and just be mindful so you don't run it over and break that guide wire. Now if you do break that wire, you can still splice it. You can buy wire splicers pretty cheap. I would keep a couple on hand just in case somebody does something, trips over it, cuts it accidentally, UPS driver, what have you. But you can splice that wire, and you can even add more wire. I think the maximum amount of wire they said is 300 meters. You can add another 50 meters to the 250 meters that it came with. So I have had this for about 10 days now, and I've let it do its thing, and it put it on a schedule. There's certain days in the schedule where I have it do an edge before it starts doing a regular cut. Usually about 2 times a week it does an edge, and I have it cutting around 5 days out of the week. 6 hours on 2 days, and then I think 3 hours on 3 of the other days. So I think this is a good option for a lot of folks out there. It's probably not for everybody. Me, myself, I mean, I still like cutting grass. I still like putting the headphones on, and you know, I have grass out by the street that I have to tend to, which is about 700 feet down the driveway. So I can't totally rely on something like this to cut all of my grass. But if you have a smaller lot, especially if it's enclosed within one area, if it's not too complicated to put the guide wires down, this is probably more for a yard like that. So it may not be for everybody, but I thought I would just share this product with you. If you want more information about it, I'll leave it in the description. If there's any deals going on or sales like that, I'll leave any links that are pertinent to that also. But for now, that's going to be it for today. I appreciate everybody watching. Hope you enjoy and subscribe to these videos. Click on that little bell when you want to know when a new one's coming out. And keep an eye on us. Take care, everybody.